Let's go to tier 4 then for Jamie. It's Ramondre Stevenson, Joe Mixon, Jahmyr Gibbs, Travis Etienne, Aaron Jones, and Najee Harris. Ramondre Stevenson, Joe Mixon, Jahmyr Gibbs, Travis Etienne, Aaron Jones, and Najee Harris. Jamie, go ahead, break down this tier.
So this is where I think we start to get more question marks. The first 3 tiers, I think it's pretty obvious. So Stevenson, there's the concern of what do they do behind him and how much do they take him off the field for whatever they're going to do? Because last year he was great. The games where Damien Harris was out, he was a star. And now Harris is gone. He's in Buffalo. So is it going to be what you sort of they've hinted at, or at least the speculation out of the New England media is Ty Montgomery or Pierre Strong, somebody having a role in the passing game? We'll find out. I think Stevenson's going to get more opportunities to maybe get some goal line chances because that went to Damien Harris when those guys were there. For Mixon, the concerns. We talked about this yesterday. End of season numbers are productive. Sometimes it's a little fluky how it happens. The 4-touchdown game against Carolina. But top 7, in points per game, that's hard to overlook. Gibbs and Etienne, I think, have the opportunity to sort of, set themselves up to be in that next group, as Chris alluded to. We have the changing of the guard. These are 2 guys that could be the future of the position, with Stevenson also. But, Gibbs is more of a leap of faith that I think he's going to do more than what DeAndre Swift did, who was top 10 in targets, top 12 in receptions, and it's more a PPR thing than non-PPR because David Montgomery's still there. Jones, I think, is still going to be very involved in the passing game, and Harris, is more of a volume thing. So, these are the guys I think, which to me, this feels almost like a mini dead zone, because you can see the flaws, with how this goes. And these are going to be most likely the round 3 to 4 running backs here. You can see the pitfalls. Packers offense falls off. There's some talk about Jaylen Warren getting more work in Pittsburgh. Again, Gibbs with Montgomery, Stevenson with what happens there. So you can see the downside. But for me, I'm looking more at the upside, especially with Stevenson, with Gibbs, and with Aaron Jones in the passing game.
I would say it's less that I don't like this group and more that this is where the position really opens up, right? And I think you could include Breece Hall in this group. I think you can include Miles Sanders in this group. I think you can include Alexander Mattison in this group. So it's less that like I don't like Travis Etienne or Aaron Jones at their prices, and more that just I don't know if there's as much differentiating this group from the next group. I think in terms of upside, you can make that case because Stevenson, if he gets 80 targets like he was on pace for last season, did he get to 80 targets? He was like 5th in.
I think
was pretty close.
9 catches, right?
Yeah. So like if he does that again, he's probably going to wipe out his ADP. And obviously Aaron Jones has been one of the best values for a while. I would put Mixon kind of in a half tier above the rest of this group, just because now that the contract situation is settled, I think he's going to be a top 12 running back almost by default. Like Jamie said, the road there might be a little bumpy and it might be frustrating. There might be some inconsistencies. I think the principal problem with Joe Mixon has been one of perception. I think like 5 years ago, the royal we as a community decided Joe Mixon was just this like incredible player, this difference-making player who was going to outperform what was then a pretty bad Bengals offense. And then he ended up kind of just being a guy, right? Like he played as well as the offense did. When the offense was better, he got better. And so I think for me, it's just coming down to like Chase Evans was a 3-down running back in college. And so there's some potential there, but I think Joe Mixon's clearly going to get 240 carries and 70 targets. And I just think at the end of the day, he's going to be a top 12 running back by default. And there's a chance that he has a boom season and scores 15 touchdowns and is a top 5 running back.
Yeah, we talked about it a lot yesterday. I mean, hopefully that he can boost that yards per carry like Josh Jacobs did, get better offensive line play. And then if he does get that work, then you're talking about seriously a guy who could challenge his RB1.
He feels like this year's Josh Jacobs to me. That's the way I look at it.
Unfortunately, Josh Jacobs was almost a 5th-round pick last year, so you're not going to get that kind of value with Joe Mixon, but you could still maybe get him in round 3. It's interesting, guys. You always got to compare running backs to wide receivers or other players that are being drafted at the same time. So this tier is a lot of round 3 picks: Stevenson, Mixon, Jahmyr Gibbs, Etienne, Aaron Jones, Najee Harris. Some of them will be in round 4. I could not believe this. Now look, ADP, a guy in round 3 and ADP could obviously go in round 2, or obviously ADP is what it is. It's an average. But using Fantasy Football Calculator, over the last 5 years in PPR average draft position, there have only been 4 running backs who were drafted in round 3 of a 12-team league and finished as a top 12 running back. It just has not been fruitful. It just hasn't been one that's produced, incredible running backs.
Is that because of, you brought this up yesterday, that we are seeing running backs getting pushed down more? So typically we see those guys go in the first 2 rounds that are top 12 guys?
Not real. I mean, look, you might be past 12 running backs at some point in the 3rd round in ADP, but still you'd expect more of them to finish as top 12 guys. And 4 of them, so out of the 60 running backs over the last 5 years who have finished top 12, 2/3 of them were drafted in the first 2 rounds, 40 of them. And then there's no other spot where you can say this is where you get your top 12 running back.
That's comparable to how that's been the case for running back historically. The dead zone has historically also included the 3rd round.
Yeah.
Maybe that's changing because running backs are getting pushed down, but generally speaking, I think it's more the top 12 guys, that RB1 tier, where those guys get pushed up because we're sure that they're good. We're sure that their situations are good. And we don't really have questions about the playing time. What you see in starting in this tier, really, and the previous tier had some age and injury concerns, but this tier is where we have, does Travis Etienne have any passing game upside? Does, Aaron Jones, he's got a split backfield. Is his offense going to be any good? Najee Harris, is he any good at all?
Right.
At anything. So that's where you start to see like the second or 4th tier, I guess, at running back gets pushed up because potential and upside, and you can start to make the case. But once you start to have to make multiple cases for guys, that's usually when you should probably look at the other options and say, well, maybe this is a better time to get my second wide receiver. Should I take Jalen Waddle instead? A guy that I think we have fewer question marks about.
Right. But once you get to like the Aaron Jones, Najee Harris, Waddle's long gone.
Sure, yeah.
So now you're talking about DK Metcalf and Christian Watson and DeAndre Hopkins. So I could see people easily going Mark Andrews there if he's there, or easily going quarterback. I mean, that's just the easiest thing to do, or is take Joe Burrow maybe. Or
round 3 is going to be, I think, the sticking point for a lot of people. Like with this, am I comfortable here? Do I pivot?
Yeah.
Do I pivot to quarterback? Do I stick with? Well, no, I don't know always, because the receivers have typically been pretty good in round 3.
Yeah.
Now there's.
Last year, I looked at that and I was shocked at how bad they were. They feel good in round 3 usually.
Well, you're saying bad how they finished. I'm talking about going in.
Yes, I know, but we've been wrong. This year they don't feel that good, do they? In round 3.
This year the round 3 receivers, you mentioned a few of them: Metcalf, Watson, Debo. Those are the ones I think that for me, I would not take those guys. And I'm a Christian Watson guy, but I wouldn't take them in round 3. For me, the ones that I struggle with are Keenan Allen, Calvin Ridley, and it's past Chris Olave. So it's once we get past Chris Olave, I'm fine with Olave in round 3. But it's Ridley because I like him, but I think round 3 is too pricey. Keenan Allen just because of his age, feels a little too pricey. It's almost like at this point, and I'm not an early quarterback guy, but it's like, okay, I'd rather just take the security factor, knowing that, okay, I'm getting one of the top 3 guys that are still there, or just pivoting to running back. But the problem with that for me is I don't want to take usually 2 running backs in my first 3 picks, and that's what ends up happening.
Okay, let's go to tier 5 here. Reminder: Stevenson, Mixon, Gibbs, Etienne, Aaron Jones, Najee Harris were tier 4. Tier 5, I mean, Jamie, ooh la la, this is the theme of the show. Dobbins, Dameon Pierce, Alexander Mattison, Miles Sanders, Breece Hall, and James Conner, who goes really late. I mean, maybe round 7. But J.K. Dobbins, Dameon Pierce, Alexander Mattison, Miles Sanders, Breece Hall, James Conner. Your thoughts on that group, Jamie?
Now, obviously, Breece Hall is the one that's going to stand out because most people are going to have him probably 2 tiers higher, and I get it. If he's healthy, he'll move up at least 1 tier for me. But I just look at the history of running backs first year off of an ACL tear, which is why I'm probably not going to draft a lot of Breece Hall and not a lot of Javonte Williams, although Williams makes it easier based on where he goes. But I just think you look at the track record right now, and let's factor this in as well. Ramondre Stevenson might get Dalvin Cook. Breece Hall might get Dalvin Cook. Those are 2 rumored spots for him, along with the Dolphins, where we could see him, sort of wreck a backfield here. So just keep that in mind depending on when you're watching this. But for me, I think if you get Hall at the right price and don't necessarily have to pay a premium for him, knowing that there's going to be some potential pitfalls, I think this is the spot for him. But I think we've talked about this. These are workhorse backs that are going to get a lot of work. You can maybe make the case that Devin Singletary and in Houston, and we'll see what happens with the backups in Baltimore. Most likely Gus Edwards, and a lot is going to be made of what happens in training camp with the Vikings backfield behind Alexander Mattison, whether it's Ty Chandler or Nwagnu or even McBride, to see there. But these guys should have an opportunity to get a lot of work, and that's what we're looking for. And again, you're getting these guys that have huge upside if they hit. How I feel about Dobbins. I think he's going to have a monster season year 2 off an ACL with what this offense looks like. Pierce was great, in his rookie campaign in a worse situation. The situation got better because I think the quarterback play will be better. Madison, Sanders, Hall and Connor, they're all should hopefully dominate their workload in their backfields. And again, starting in round 4 is when these guys will come off the board. It usually feels bad, but I don't think this year is going to feel as bad as it has in the past. And hopefully these guys are productive.